So I'd say I've gotten a fair amount of questions on what it really takes as far as money-wise goes to raise bison. Let's go over some of these expenses and see if we can give a little bit more insight into it. I bought one of these 20-foot shipping containers this last spring and used it as a shed. Last couple weeks, I moved it with a skid steer with everything in it. It was a bad idea. Everything came crashing down, broke the shelves. I got a lot of work to do on it. Not today though. We need to give the bison some more minerals. They like those fresh minerals. A lot of times what happens is when you put minerals out there, the rain kind of washes it out and doesn't make it as potent. When you put fresh minerals out there, they tend to gravitate towards that. Coyote thinks he's the boss man. We'll give them some feed, but first we need to go down here and check this fence, because I think I saw an insulator that was broken when we drove in on the driveway this morning. There it is. I thought this came off. So I know we can all be a little shy when it comes down to telling other people how much we have in our bank account. Well, when it comes down to how much land you own or how big your house is, it really kind of translates to you having that in the bank account. So you won't really hear a lot of farmers and ranchers just openly and willingly ready to tell you how much land they own and how many animals they have. You know, when I first moved out to the country from the city, I would ask other farmers or ranchers how much land they had, and they would be kind of like, a few. And I never really understood why nobody was really that open with it until I kind of understood that concept of it's really kind of like opening up your pocketbook and telling everybody how much you have in your bank account. So I get that now, and in a lot of ways I feel the same way. But what I do also understand is there are people out there that are first starting out, and they really want to try to figure out if this is a viable thing that they want to get involved in. And also people are curious too. So to an extent, I do try to be fairly open with what it really takes to raise this animal and what it really takes to kind of move out in the country and go to a different lifestyle like what we have. So obviously the elephant in the room when you're looking at raising cattle or bison or something of the sort is land. So land is going to be at the forefront of what you need to raise this animal. Well, when we lived in the city and we were living in a small, about 600 square foot house at the base level, and then you had an upstairs which added a couple hundred feet. So I mean, all in all, the house was probably 800-900 square feet. But when you live there and you have the concept of moving out to the country and trying to figure out how many acres you need to raise an animal like this. And then once you kind of start adding up of how many acres per animal it takes, which in this area we're at about 5 acres per animal, you add that up and you say, well, I want 25 animals, or I want 30 or 40 or 50 or 100. Add that up and you end up with a sizable amount of land and a sizable amount of loan and a sizable amount of down payment, and so on and so forth. It can be very daunting, that is for sure. Renting land is always an option. Problem is, everybody else thinks it's an option too. So you're gonna have to compete against other farmers and ranchers that want that same ground. I would recommend getting a relationship with that landowner, and a lot of times buffalo really help you, because if there are landowners out there that really want to see native animals on their ground, or just really love the buffalo and they really want to see that on their land, but they don't have the money to put into the buffalo, and they have the land and you have the money to put in the buffalo, but you don't have the land, it can be a really good relationship. We made a really short move to Virginia about 5 years ago, and all I did was I put out a Craigslist ad and I asked if anybody was willing to have bison on their land, to rent the land from someone who was raising bison currently, and they had been doing it for about 3 years. I had a number of people really asking if I could raise the animal on their ground. Now, I understand if you're new to it, you don't have experience, you won't be able to put that out there, but I still think that that is a really good option to see if there's anybody who really wants this animal on their ground but aren't willing to do the work and want a little bit of a revenue stream for their property. Some of the drawbacks to renting land are obviously you have to find the right person who is willing to rent that ground to you, and also it's not your property. So anything that you do as far as improvements go, you have to be okay with leaving those if you have to move out from there. But as far as monetarily goes, it's a really, really good option if you can build a relationship with that landowner. But if you don't want to lease the land and you have cash in the bank, or you have enough credit and a good enough job that you can get a loan on it, then by all means do that. There are some government agencies that really want to make it easy for you to raise bison on the ground. I have not done that personally, but I know there are options out there. So you do have multiple options when it comes to the really biggest investment that you're gonna have in all of this is the ground. Now, the ground that I purchased here was about $2,000 an acre. There has been a significant amount of inflation in the last year and a half, so it has appreciated from there, but it's always cyclical. So always remember, buy low, sell high if you're going to get into real estate or buying ground. If you cannot afford it though, leasing is a really good option. You just have to find the right landowner that really wants this animal on their field and really wants to see you succeed. So we got the elephant out of the room. What are some other expenses we need to look at? Fencing is a big thing. So the way I fence is I fence with high-tensile electric fence. This high-tensile fence right here runs about $90 to $120 per 4,000 foot roll. I have 6 strands on this. Do the math. That will tell you how much money it takes per foot of the fence just for the wiring. Now, you need to factor in your insulator costs. You need to factor in your corner posts and your gates. And then if you have any charger or any insulators like that. So all the little components need to be factored in. This field right here that I'm showing you is about 6 acres, okay? It costed me about $1,200 to fence this 6-acre field. Now, something cool about fencing to think about is if you are fencing a larger area per linear foot, it will cost you less, as opposed to fencing a smaller area and then fencing another smaller area and another smaller area. Okay, that's the way I'm doing it here, just because we want multiple paddocks. But if your style of ranching is just to put them on a big open area and leave them, fencing the entire thing first would be the best bet. Personally, I think the best way to raise these animals and raise any type of livestock would be to have multiple pastures, 20 to 40 pastures, and to rotate them consistently. But that is my take on it. Everybody else can have their own opinion on that, but that is my take on it. So think about that. So we got our land, we've got our fencing. What else can be involved? Corral. These animals are really easy to take care of, except for when it comes to once or twice a year. When you have to corral them, it takes a fortress, I will be honest. So you really need a 7-foot corral, and it needs to be made out of steel, and it needs to be very strong. If it's going to be portable, it needs to be heavy, it needs to be braced. If it's not going to be portable, it needs to be concreted in. There's a lot of cost when it comes down to the corral. I started building a corral at our last place, and I had to abandon that corral, unfortunately. So we are starting fresh here. I have bull panels, which we used for the corral when these guys were just calves. You can do that. And I have about 7 or 8 bull panels up there. And each one of those bull panels, I believe, cost me right around $200 a piece. Now, that is not going to get you by to vaccinate them, to worm them, or anything like that. I'm going to use those bull panels in addition to other panels that I'm going to be building as a catch pen. So they are not 7 foot tall. They are designed for cattle. But when you're using like a catch pen, it doesn't really need to be as high as it is when you have really small pressure points. So your alleyways, your small pins, or anything like that that leads up to the squeeze chute or loadouts, those are what really need to be 7 foot tall. If anybody is looking at getting into this and they just want a flat out number of what's it going to take to raise bison, unfortunately, I can't give you a number like that because there's too many variables. You know, where are you going to buy the land in the country? What's the price of the land? What kind of fencing are you going to use? How many strands of fencing are you going to use? What does the terrain look like? What kind of corral are you going to build? You know, what kind of animals are you going to buy? There's just so many different variables. So unfortunately, I can't give you a flat out number of what it would actually take. But I can tell you from our experience what it has taken us. So when I purchased this land here, $2,000 an acre. When we fenced this small area here, it was about $1,200 for 6 acres. If you're going to run barbed wire, it's going to be more than that. If you're going to run woven wire, it's going to be more than that. So those are kind of some things to think about, but those are just our expenses. Now, when it comes down to the animals, what kind of a price are we going to pay on those? The average cost at auction right now for calves, what we paid for them in this last spring, was right around $1,400 to $1,500, depending upon that animal and the quality. So if you're going to get calves, you can kind of expect to pay maybe $1,500, somewhere in there. But the price can go up to $2,000, I would say, for a really nice calf. In today's market anyway. Can you purchase 3, 4, 5 acres and buy 1 or 2 animals? I wouldn't recommend it. I know it might crush some of you guys' dreams, but I would not recommend it. These guys need open area to roam, and they need a minimum of 3 animals. These guys are herd animals. They need buddies, otherwise they can get depressed. It can actually translate into their health. So you really need some wide open spaces. The minimum that I know of someone having bison is, I believe, 15 acres. Now you could probably go down to 10 acres or something like that, but the smaller you get, the more kind of, I would say, trouble you're asking for. If you're gonna purchase adult animals, you can do that. They get a little bit more pricey. I would say today's prices are somewhere around $2,000 to $3,000 for cows, but you really need to know where those cows came from. You need to know that they're gentle. You need to know that they're healthy. So if you're really getting started, I would recommend calves as opposed to adults, I would say. I know most of you guys aren't interested in raising bison, but I think you're a little curious as to what it really costs to raise these guys. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of some insight as to what it takes to raise these animals. Some other costs I would say you need to think about are vet bills. So any type of worming medication. Are you going to feed them range cubes? Are you going to supplement feed? I don't supplement feed. Vet bills, you're going to kind of figure out how often are they going to come out. Is it going to be a $1,000 visit? It's going to be a $2,000 visit once, twice a year. So figure those things out. Currently, our vet bills are very, very low. We hardly ever have any issues with these guys, and we basically have some worming medication that we give them every couple months, and that's not terrible. You're looking at probably somewhere around $10 per animal every couple months on that. So let's do a recap. So we've got land, we've got fencing, we've got corral, we've got vet bills, and we have the animals. Now there are other expenses that you can look at, like equipment rental, equipment purchasing, building infrastructure. Those are so variable. It's really hard to get into those, unfortunately. I would say as far as our farm goes, we haven't spent a whole lot. We really haven't started getting into the infrastructure costs yet. It is coming though. So trenching for water lines, building ponds, different things like that. That is coming, and that will get pricey, but that is all up to you as the producer. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys for watching. We are Broken Arrow Bison. Remember to subscribe if you have not already. We have a Patreon account if you guys are interested in supporting our ranch. Thank you, and we will see you guys next time.